"Get in my truck right now," humble rancher says to formerly wealthy alien Mama 3. What? The gleaming spires of Elysium City burned against the twilight sky, their once pristine surfaces now blackened and broken. Loria Thandrill stood frozen in the central plaza, her silver-blue skin smudged with ash, and her once immaculate hair hanging in tangled strands around her face. Just yesterday, she had been Lady Thandrill, respected member of the Nebulan elite. Now she was simply Loria, a refugee clutching her 3 terrified children as their world crumbled around them. "Mother, they're coming," hissed her eldest daughter Mora, her large blue eyes wide with fear. At 16, she was already showing the graceful beauty that had made the Nebulan women so sought after throughout the galaxy. Her sister Arilla, 14, trembled beside her, while their brother Talon, 15, tried unsuccessfully to project bravery. The distant rumble of Scythian war machines grew louder. The invaders had struck without warning, their massive fleet descending upon the peaceful Nebulan colony world with ruthless efficiency. The planetary defense grid had fallen within hours, and now the ground forces were systematically destroying everything in their path. "This way," Loria urged, pulling her children toward what she hoped was an evacuation point. Her fitted pants and olive green jacket, once the height of Nebulan fashion, were now torn and filthy. The elegant boots that had cost a month's stipend pinched her feet as she stumbled over debris. A deafening explosion rocked the ground beneath them. Arilla screamed as a nearby building collapsed, sending a wave of dust and heat washing over them. Loria pulled her children into the shadow of a partially collapsed wall, her mind racing. The spaceport was overrun. The emergency shelters had been targeted first. Where could they possibly go? Through the thickening smoke, the growl of an engine cut through the chaos, different from the high-pitched whine of Scythian vehicles. A dark graphite pickup truck, battered and mud-splattered, came barreling down the ruined street, swerving around debris with practiced precision. The vehicle skidded to a halt beside them, and Loria found herself staring at a human, a species she'd only encountered in business dealings and diplomatic functions. This one was nothing like the polished ambassadors she'd met. His face was weathered and stubbled, his short blonde hair dusty, and his gray eyes hard as flint. He wore a simple work shirt under a tactical vest that stretched across broad shoulders. "Get in my truck right now," he barked, his voice rough with urgency. Loria hesitated, her aristocratic pride bristling at his tone. "Lady, you've got about 30 seconds before those Scythian bastards round that corner. Your choice." A distant scream punctuated his words, followed by the distinctive sound of Scythian pulse rifles. Loria pushed her children toward the truck. "Go," she commanded, helping them climb into the vehicle's bed. Talon went first, then turned to help his sisters. Loria scrambled in after them, and before she could fully settle, the truck lurched forward, tires spinning on the debris-strewn pavement. "Hold on!" the human shouted through the open rear window as he accelerated down a side street, just as a Scythian scout vehicle appeared where they had been standing moments before. The truck bounced violently as it navigated the ruined city streets. Loria held her children close, watching in stunned silence as the only world they had known for the past decade receded behind them. Flames consumed the elegant towers where they had lived in luxury. The cultural centers where she had hosted galas lay in ruins, everything gone in a single day. "Where are you taking us?" she finally managed to call through the window. "Somewhere safe," the human replied without turning. "Name's Jack Harmon. Got a farm about 60 miles outside the city. Scythians don't bother with rural areas, nothing worth stealing. I am Lady Thandrill of House." "Don't care," Jack cut her off. "Right now you're just folks who needed a ride." Loria's mouth snapped shut, unused to such a dismissal. She felt Mora's hand squeeze hers in warning. They drove in tense silence as the city gave way to suburbs, then to the rolling countryside of the colony world. Loria had never ventured this far from the city center. The landscape grew wilder, dotted with native vegetation interspersed with earth crops. The human settlements had been established decades before the Nebulans arrived and claimed the planet as their own. Night had fully fallen by the time Jack turned onto a dirt road that wound through dense forest. The children had fallen into exhausted sleep, piled against each other in the truck bed. Loria remained awake, watching the unfamiliar stars through breaks in the canopy above. Eventually, they emerged into a clearing dominated by a sturdy 2-story farmhouse. Several outbuildings stood nearby, and fenced pastures stretched into the darkness. Jack parked near the house and killed the engine. "We're here," he said, climbing out. "Let's get your kids inside." Gloria gently woke her children, who stirred groggily. Jack helped them down from the truck bed with surprising gentleness, then led them toward the house. The porch light cast a warm glow that seemed impossibly normal after the horror they'd escaped. "It's not fancy," Jack said as he opened the door, "but it's solid. Scythians won't find you here." The interior was simple but clean, worn furniture, wooden floors, and walls decorated with landscape paintings. A large fireplace dominated one wall of the main room. "You folks hungry?" Jack asked, heading toward what appeared to be a kitchen. Gloria realized they hadn't eaten since morning. "Yes," she admitted reluctantly. "Thank you." As Jack busied himself preparing food, Gloria gathered her children on a worn sofa. "It's temporary," she whispered, smoothing Arila's tangled hair. "We'll contact the Nebulan embassy on Earth as soon as possible." Talon looked around the rustic room with undisguised disdain. "How do people live like this?" "Quite happily, kid," Jack called from the kitchen, his hearing apparently sharper than Gloria had expected, "and a lot more honestly than in those fancy towers." Gloria bristled. "Our position in society was earned through generations of service." Jack emerged with plates of simple food, bread, cheese, and some kind of stew. "Sure it was," he said, his tone making it clear he believed otherwise. "Eat up. Tomorrow comes early around here." "What happens tomorrow?" Mora asked, accepting a plate. Jack's weathered face creased in what might have been a smile. "Tomorrow you folks start earning your keep. Rise and shine, your highness. Work starts at dawn on a farm." Gloria's eyes fluttered open to find Jack Harmon standing in the doorway of the small guest room where she and her daughters had spent the night. The human silhouette was backlit by the soft glow of morning light. He was already dressed in work clothes, a steaming mug in his hand. "It's not even light out," Gloria protested, pulling the unfamiliar cotton blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Sun's up in 20 minutes, Jack replied, unmoved. "Breakfast is on the table. Work clothes in the hall closet. Might not fit perfect, but they'll do. Your boy's already up." Before Gloria could respond, he was gone. She sat up, wincing at the stiffness in her back from the unfamiliar mattress. Beside her, Mora and Arilla slept on, their silver-blue faces peaceful in repose. For a moment, Gloria envied their youth and resilience. In the kitchen, she found Talon awkwardly seated at a wooden table, dressed in oversized human clothing, faded jeans and a flannel shirt that hung from his slender frame. He looked up at his mother with a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. "The human says we have to work," he said in their native tongue, his voice low. "I told him who we are, but he just laughed." Jack placed a plate of eggs and toast in front of Gloria. "English only in my house," he said firmly. "And yeah, everyone works. No free rides." "We're not charity cases," Gloria said stiffly, her accent more pronounced in her agitation. "Once I contact the Nebulan embassy—" "Good luck with that," Jack interrupted, pouring her a cup of coffee. "Scythians knocked out the long-range comms first thing. Nearest working transmitter is at Fort Marshall, 3 days' journey through Scythian-controlled territory." Gloria's stomach tightened. "You're lying." "Why would I bother?" Jack shrugged. "Drink your coffee. You'll need the energy." By the time Mora and Arilla joined them, dressed in 2 large human clothing, Jack had laid out the day's tasks. "The boy comes with me to repair fencing. Ladies, you're on stable duty." "Stable duty?" Arilla echoed, her delicate features scrunched in confusion. "Horses need feeding and their stalls need cleaning," Jack explained with exaggerated patience. "Shovel, wheelbarrow, pitchfork, pretty straightforward." "You expect us to handle animal waste?" Gloria asked incredulously. Jack's weathered face hardened. "I expect you to earn your keep, unless you'd prefer to try your luck with the Scythians." An hour later, Gloria stood in a horse stall, pitchfork in hand, staring at the soiled bedding with undisguised horror. Beside her, Mora was making a valiant attempt to scoop manure into a wheelbarrow, while Arilla stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. "This is beneath us," Arilla whispered. "Father would never have allowed this." The mention of her late husband sent a pang through Gloria's chest. Valen had died 2 years ago in a diplomatic incident, an unfortunate misunderstanding, according to the official report. His death had diminished their family's standing, but they had maintained their lifestyle through Loria's careful management of their remaining connections. All of that was gone now, burned away with Elysium City. "Your father isn't here," Loria said more sharply than she intended, "and neither are our servants." She jabbed the pitchfork into the bedding with clumsy determination. "We do what we must to survive." By midday, Loria's hands were blistered and her back ached fiercely. The stalls were only half cleaned, and her daughters had long since abandoned any pretense of helping, retreating to sit on hay bales in exhausted protest. Jack appeared in the stable doorway, his expression unreadable as he surveyed their progress. Talon trailed behind him, looking equally worn but somehow satisfied. "Not bad for city folk," Jack said. Surprising Loria with what sounded almost like approval, he approached and took the pitchfork from her hands, examining her blisters with a frown. "Should have given you gloves." His calloused fingers were unexpectedly gentle as they cradled her palm. Loria felt a strange flutter in her chest at the contact. "Your hands are so rough," she said without thinking. "That's what honest work does," he replied, releasing her hand. "Come on, lunch break." Over a simple meal of sandwiches and fruit, Jack explained the workings of the farm. He raised horses and cattle, grew enough crops to be largely self-sufficient, and traded with neighboring farms for what he couldn't produce himself. "How did you know to come to the city yesterday?" Mora asked suddenly. Jack's expression darkened. "So I was delivering horses to the garrison, saw the Scythian ships breaking atmosphere, and figured it was time to clear out." He took a swig from his water bottle. "Took a detour through the city on my way home. Good thing I did." "Yes," Loria agreed quietly. "Thank you for that." Jack seemed momentarily disarmed by her gratitude. "Well, you're welcome." He cleared his throat. "Anyway, your boy did good work this morning. Quick learner." Talon straightened at the praise, a flush darkening his blue cheeks. "I have never fixed anything before," he admitted. "We always had people for that." "Had people for everything, I bet," Jack said, but without his usual edge. "Nothing wrong with hiring help if you can afford it. But there's something to be said for knowing how to do things yourself." After lunch, Jack took pity on Loria's blistered hands and reassigned her to gathering eggs from the chicken coop, a task she found only marginally less distasteful, but considerably less painful. As she carefully placed each egg in the basket, she watched through the barn door as Jack patiently showed Talon how to mend a piece of equipment. Her son was listening intently, his usual aristocratic disdain replaced by genuine curiosity. It was a side of Talon she hadn't seen since he was a small child, before the weight of Nebulan's social expectations had settled on his shoulders. By evening, every muscle in Loria's body screamed in protest as she sank into a chair at the dinner table. Jack served a hearty stew that she was too hungry to critique, though in truth it was better than she expected. "Tomorrow will be easier," Jack said, noticing her wince as she shifted in her seat. "First day's always the worst." "Do humans really live like this all the time?" Arila asked, her voice small. Jack's laugh was surprisingly warm. "Some of us. Not all humans are farmers, just like I'm guessing not all Nebulans are fancy aristocrats." "We're not aristocrats," Loria corrected automatically. "The Nebulan Collective abolished hereditary titles centuries ago. Our status is merit-based." "Uh-huh," Jack said, skeptically. "And what exactly did you do to merit all that luxury?" Loria opened her mouth to deliver a cutting response, then closed it. What had she done, really? Married well, maintained the right connections, hosted the right parties. "I thought so," Jack said, but his tone held more amusement than judgment. "Don't worry, your ladyship. You'll earn your keep here, fair and square." As Loria met his gaze across the table, she was startled to find herself not offended, but intrigued by the challenge in his gray eyes. A week passed, then two. The rhythm of farm life gradually became less foreign to Loria and her children. Blisters hardened into calluses, muscles strengthened, and complaints grew fewer. Even Arila, the most resistant to their new circumstances, had found a niche caring for the chickens, who seemed unbothered by her blue skin and silver hair. One evening after dinner, as the children helped clean up, Jack invited Loria to join him on the porch. The sunset painted the sky in hues that reminded her of Nebulan festivals, and for a moment, homesickness washed over her. Your boy's got a knack with the horses, Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence. Never seen Thunderbolt take to someone so quick. Talon always had an affinity for animals, Loria replied, surprised by the pride in her voice. Though on Nebula Prime, we only kept ornamental creatures. Jack snorted. What's the point of an animal that doesn't earn its keep? Beauty. Status, Loria shrugged. The same reason we did most things. And what did you do exactly? Jack asked, leaning against the porch railing. Before all this, Loria hesitated. I managed our household, organized social functions, maintained connections that benefited my husband's diplomatic career. So you were a professional party planner? There was a teasing glint in Jack's gray eyes. It was more complex than that, Loria protested, but found herself smiling. Though perhaps not as useful as knowing how to birth a calf. Speaking of which, Jack said, his expression growing serious, we've got a heifer due any day now. First-timer, might be trouble. Is that why you've been checking the barn every few hours? Jack looked surprised. You noticed that? I noticed more than you think, Loria said softly. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Jack cleared his throat and looked away first. What about you? Loria asked. You know everything about us, but you've shared almost nothing about yourself. Jack's face closed off slightly. Not much to tell. Born on Earth. Military for 8 years. Came here after and bought this place. End of story. That's hardly a complete biography, Loria pressed. No family? No. Partner. Had a wife once. Didn't work out. Jack's tone made it clear the subject was closed. Storm's coming, he added, nodding toward the horizon where dark clouds were gathering. Better check the livestock before it hits. As if on cue, a distant rumble of thunder rolled across the fields. Jack was halfway to the barn when the first fat raindrops began to fall. Loria hurried after him, reaching the barn just as the skies opened. Inside, the animals were restless, sensing the approaching storm. Something's wrong with Rosie, Jack said, moving quickly to a stall where a brown and white cow was pacing anxiously. She shouldn't be this agitated. Loria approached cautiously. The calf? Jack nodded, his expression grim as he examined the heifer. She's in labor, but something's not right. Calf's positioned wrong, I think. Outside, the storm intensified. Rain hammered against the roof, and wind howled through the gaps in the old barn's walls. A brilliant flash of lightning illuminated the interior, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder that made the structure shudder. The heifer bellowed in distress. I need to reposition the calf, Jack said, rolling up his sleeves. Can you handle helping, or should I send for Talon? Loria straightened her spine. I can help. Jack gave her an appraising look, then nodded. Wash your hand and arms in that bucket. There's antiseptic soap beside it. What followed was the most physically demanding and emotionally intense experience of Loria's life. Under Jack's calm, clear direction, she assisted as he worked to save both cow and calf. Her aristocratic sensibility screamed in protest, but she pushed them aside, focusing instead on the miracle unfolding before her. When the calf finally emerged, a wobbly, wet creature with enormous eyes, Loria felt a surge of accomplishment unlike anything she'd experienced at her most successful diplomatic function. We did it, she breathed, watching as the mother cow began to lick her newborn. You did good, Jack said, his voice rough with exhaustion and something else. Respect. Real good. They cleaned up in companionable silence, the storm still raging outside. Loria was acutely aware of Jack's presence, the strength in his shoulders as he moved hay bales, the gentleness in his hands as he checked on the new mother and calf, the way his damp shirt clung to his torso. We should wait out the worst of it, Jack said, glancing toward the barn doors where rain was coming down in sheets. No sense getting soaked. He spread a clean horse blanket over a pile of hay and gestured for her to sit. From a cabinet, he produced a thermos of coffee and 2 tin cups. Always keep emergency supplies out here, he explained, pouring the steaming liquid. Storms, calving season, you never know when you'll be stuck. Loria accepted the cup gratefully, her fingers brushing against his. The context sent a surprising warmth through her that had nothing to do with the coffee. Tell me about Nebula Prime, Jack said, settling beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. It's beautiful, she said softly. The cities float among the clouds. The architecture is all curves and light, nothing like the angular buildings humans prefer. And the people? Formal, status-conscious. Loria smiled ruefully. I was considered quite progressive for allowing my children to attend mixed schools with other species, including humans. Progressive, huh? Jack's mouth quirked. And here I thought you were just a snob. I was, Loria admitted with a laugh. And perhaps, old habits die hard. Not that hard, Jack countered. You've changed a lot in 2 weeks. Have I? The Loria who arrived here wouldn't have helped birth a calf, wouldn't be sitting on a hay bale drinking coffee with a dirty farmer. Perhaps I'm simply adapting to survive, she suggested, though they both knew it was more than that. Humans are good at that too, Jack said. Adapting. It's how we've spread across the galaxy despite being the new kids on the block. Your species has accomplished remarkable things in a short time, Loria acknowledged. It's why the Nebulan Collective sought alliance rather than conquest. Jack's eyebrow rose. Conquest? You think you could have taken us? Historically speaking, technologically superior civilizations usually dominate less advanced ones, Loria said diplomatically. Maybe on paper, Jack replied with a confident grin that sent an unexpected flutter through her stomach. But humans have a way of defying the odds. Another crash of thunder shook the barn, causing Loria to jump. Without thinking, she grabbed Jack's arm. He stiffened momentarily, then relaxed, his hand covering hers. Just thunder, he said softly, but neither of them moved away. In the dim light of the barn's single lamp, with the storm raging outside and new life breathing peacefully in the stall behind them, the space between them seemed charged with possibility. When Jack finally leaned toward her, Loria met him halfway. Dawn broke with unusual clarity after the storm, bathing the farm in golden light. Loria woke in Jack's bed, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The plain wooden furniture, the worn quilt, the scent of pine, and something distinctly male. The events of the previous night rushed back, bringing heat to her silver-blue cheeks. She had never expected to find herself drawn to a human, let alone acting on that attraction. On Nebula Prime, interspecies relationships weren't forbidden exactly, but they weren't common in her social circle. Such pairings were considered eccentric at best, scandalous at worst. Yet there had been nothing scandalous about the way Jack had touched her, with reverence and hunger in equal measure. His calloused hands, so different from her late husband's smooth ones, had awakened sensations she'd forgotten existed. Their differences, human and Nebulan, farmer and aristocrat, had seemed to dissolve in the darkness of the storm-swept night. The bedroom door opened and Jack entered carrying 2 steaming mugs. He'd already dressed for the day's work, but his hair was still damp from washing. "Morning," he said, his voice gruff but gentle. "Thought you might want coffee." "Thank you." Loria accepted the mug, careful to keep the quilt around her. Not out of modesty, Nebulans were far less prudish than humans about nudity, but because the morning brought uncertainty about where they stood. Jack sat on the edge of the bed. "About last night, it was unexpected," Loria said quickly, "but not unwelcome." There was a hint of vulnerability in his question that surprised her. "No," she admitted, "not unwelcome at all." Relief flickered across his face, followed by something warmer. He leaned forward and kissed her, a brief but tender gesture that left her wanting more. "The kids will be up soon," he said, pulling back reluctantly. "Might be best if you were in your own room when they start moving around." Loria nodded, understanding his concern. "My children are more flexible about such matters than human adolescents might be. On Nebula Prime, it's not unusual for widowed parents to take companions." "Companions, huh?" Jack's mouth quirked in that half-smile she was growing to adore. "That what I am?" "I don't know what you are," Loria replied honestly. "This is uncharted territory for me." "Me too." Jack stood, his expression turning serious. "But we've got bigger problems than defining whatever this is between us. Got a call on the emergency band while you were sleeping. Scythian patrols have been spotted 10 miles east of here." Loria's blood ran cold. "How close will they come?" "Too damn close for comfort." Jack ran a hand through his hair. I need to show you something after breakfast. All of you." By the time Loria had dressed and joined the family in the kitchen, the children were already finishing their meal. Talon was discussing feed mixtures with Jack, while the girls were debating the merits of different chicken breeds. The domesticity of the scene struck Loria. How quickly they had adapted to this human environment. How comfortable they seemed in Jack's home. Mora looked up as Loria entered, her perceptive gaze taking in her mother's slightly disheveled appearance. A knowing smile played at her lips, but she said nothing. Erla, however, had never mastered subtlety. "Mother, your hair's a mess, and you're wearing yesterday's clothes." Talon's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing as they darted between his mother and Jack. The protective instinct of a Nebulan male toward female family members flared in his posture. "Your mother helped deliver a calf during the storm," Jack said smoothly. "We got caught in the barn until it passed. Long night. It wasn't a lie exactly, but the omission hung in the air." Talon's shoulders remained tense. "The calf's doing well," Loria added, pouring herself more coffee. "You should see her, Erla. She's beautiful." "After breakfast," Jack interrupted, "I need to show you all something important. Finish up quick." 20 minutes later, they stood in a clearing behind the barn. Jack knelt and brushed away leaves and dirt, revealing a metal hatch set into the ground. He pressed his palm against a scanner hidden in the handle. "Military-grade bunker," he explained as the hatch unsealed with a hiss. "Built it when I bought the place. Most folks thought I was paranoid." "Most folks were wrong," Talon observed. Jack nodded grimly. "Comes with being ex-Special Forces. You learn to prepare for the worst." He led them down a short ladder into a surprisingly spacious underground room. Metal shelving lined the walls stocked with supplies. Food, water, medical equipment, and weapons. Lots of weapons. "This is a small arsenal," Loria said, eyeing the pulse rifles and conventional firearms with alarm. "Standard human preparation," Jack replied. "We don't take kindly to threats." "Is that why you rescued us?" Talon asked suddenly. "Because we were threatened." Jack considered the young Nebulan. "Partly. Mostly because it was the right thing to do." "And now," Talon pressed, "why continue to protect us when it puts you at risk?" Jack's gaze flicked briefly to Loria before returning to her son. "Because you're under my roof now. That makes you my responsibility." "We're not children," Talon bristled. "No," Jack agreed, "but you're not soldiers either." "I am." "Was," Loria corrected gently. Jack's expression hardened. "Some things you never stop being." He turned to a communications console in the corner and activated it. A holographic map appeared, showing the surrounding area. Red dots indicated Scythian patrol movements. "They're searching in a grid pattern," Jack explained, "looking for refugees most likely. They'll reach this area within 2 days." "What do we do?" Mora asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "We have options," Jack said. "We can hide in the bunker until they pass. We can try to make it to Fort Marshall, risky but doable with the right preparation. Or we can stay put and hope they bypass the farm entirely." "What do you recommend?" Loria asked. "Depends on how much you trust me," Jack replied, his eyes meeting hers. The question hung in the air, weighted with everything that had passed between them, from their first meeting in the burning city to the intimacy they'd shared just hours ago. "I trust you," Loria said firmly. She glanced at her children. "We all do." Something shifted in Jack's expression, a softening, a certainty. "Then we prepare for all contingencies, but we stay put for now. This is defensible ground, and running creates its own risks." As they climbed back to the surface, Talon hung back, motioning for Jack to wait. Loria paused on the ladder, listening. "My father died 2 years ago," Talon said quietly. "Since then, I've tried to protect my mother and sisters as best I could, but I couldn't protect them from the Scythians." "No one could have," Sir Jack replied. "You're protecting us now," Talon continued, "and I see how you look at my mother." Jack didn't deny it. "Does that bother you?" "Nebulan males are traditionally protective of female relatives," Talon explained, "but I'm not blind. She smiles more with you than she has since father died." And I won't stand in the way of that," Talon said with surprising maturity. "But if you hurt her, I won't, Jack promised, his voice solemn. As they emerged into the sunlight, Loria pretended she hadn't overheard. But the exchange warmed her heart. Her son's protectiveness, Jack's respect for it, and the tentative acceptance between the two most important males in her life. The day passed in focused preparation. Jack checked weapons, reinforced doors and windows, and taught them basic defensive positions. By evening, the farm had been subtly transformed into a fortress, though it would still appear as an ordinary homestead to casual observation. As night fell, a new tension settled over the household. The knowledge of approaching danger mixed with the heightened awareness between Jack and Loria. When the children finally retired to their rooms, they found themselves alone in the kitchen, the silence heavy with unspoken words. "Thank you," Loria said at last, "for everything you've done for us." Jack moved closer, his hand finding hers. "I'd do it again, in a heartbeat." When he pulled her into his arms, it felt like coming home. A sensation Loria had thought lost forever in the flames of Elysium City. "Lower your center of gravity, feet shoulder-width apart. Don't telegraph your moves." Jack circled Talon in the barn's open area, now converted into an impromptu training ground. 3 days had passed since they'd discovered the approaching Scythian patrols, and Jack had been drilling the family in basic combat techniques every morning. "Nebulans rely too much on technology," Jack explained, demonstrating a defensive stance. "Scythians are the same. Humans learn to fight with our bodies first, our tools second." Talon mimicked the stance, his natural Nebulan grace giving him an advantage in movement, though he lacked Jack's raw strength. "In diplomatic training, we're taught that physical combat is primitive," Talon said, blocking Jack's slow-motion attack. "But I'm beginning to see its value." "Primitive doesn't mean ineffective," Jack replied with a grin. "Sometimes the old ways work best." From her position near the barn door, Loria watched with a mixture of pride and concern. Her children were adapting to these harsh realities better than she'd expected. Mora had shown surprising aptitude with firearms, her natural Nebulan precision making her a quick study. Even Irilla, the most resistant to their new life, had mastered basic first aid under Jack's patient instruction. "Your turn," Jack called to Loria. "Show me that disarming technique again." As Loria stepped forward to demonstrate the Nebulan security move she'd learned during her husband's diplomatic career, she caught Mora's knowing smile. Her eldest daughter had been the first to recognize the change in Loria's relationship with Jack, accepting it with the pragmatic adaptability that characterized her generation of Nebulans. "The key is to use your opponent's momentum against them," Loria explained, positioning herself in front of Jack. "Nebulans may not prioritize physical combat, but our diplomatic security forces are extensively trained." She executed the move fluidly, using Jack's forward motion to flip him onto his back. He landed with a grunt, looking up at her with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "Not bad for a society lady," he said with a wink that sent warmth spreading through her chest. Their training session was interrupted by the perimeter alarm, a subtle vibration through the specialized communicators Jack had distributed. He was on his feet instantly, all playfulness gone. "Positions," he ordered quietly. "Remember the plan." They moved with practiced efficiency, Mora to the hayloft with a pulse rifle, Talon to guard the house's rear entrance, Irilla to the bunker to monitor communications. Loria followed Jack to the farmhouse porch, where they could appear as casual residents while maintaining clear sight lines to the approaching road. "Single vehicle," Jack murmured, his enhanced binoculars trained on the distant dust cloud. "Scythian scout model. 2, maybe 3 occupants." Loria's heart hammered in her chest, but her hands remained steady as she adjusted the loose shirt covering her holstered sidearm. Jack had insisted everyone be armed at all times. "Remember," Jack said softly, "we're just simple farmers. You're my wife's cousin visiting from the southern continent, blue skin pigmentation from working the indigo fields." Loria nodded, the cover story well rehearsed. "And if they recognize me as Nebulan?" "Then we move to Plan B." Jack's expression hardened. "But let's hope it doesn't come to that." The Scythian vehicle, a sleek, predatory thing with too many angles, was pulled up to the farm's entrance. 2 figures emerged, tall and insectoid, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming in the midday sun. They wore the distinctive armor of Scythian shock troops, modified for reconnaissance. "Steady," Jack whispered, rising to his feet with deliberate casualness. He raised a hand in greeting, the picture of a wary but non-hostile farmer. The Scythians approached, mandibles clicking in their native language before one activated a translator. "Human residents," the taller one stated, its synthesized voice unnaturally flat. "This area is under Scythian protection. We search for fugitives." "Haven't seen any fugitives," Jack replied easily. "Just me and my family here." The Scythian's compound eyes shifted to Loria, multifaceted surfaces reflecting her tense expression. "This one is not human," it declared. "Identification required." Loria stepped forward, drawing on years of diplomatic training to keep her voice steady. "I'm from the southern indigo farms. My mother was off-world, hence my coloration." The Scythian's antennae twitched skeptically. It produced a scanning device, aiming it at Loria. "This will verify." The scanner would instantly identify her as Nebulan. Loria moved without thinking, executing the disarming technique she demonstrated minutes earlier. The scanner clattered to the ground as the surprised Scythian stumbled backward. The second Scythian reached for its weapon, but Jack was faster. His sidearm appeared in his hand as if by magic, the shot precisely placed to disable rather than kill. "Get in the house," Jack ordered Loria, his voice deadly calm as he covered both Scythians. The first invader recovered quickly, mandibles clicking in rage as it lunged toward Jack. Loria drew her own weapon, but before she could fire, a pulse shot from the barn's hayloft struck the Scythian squarely in the thorax. Mora's aim was impeccable. The wounded Scythian writhed on the ground while its companion hissed in their native tongue, likely calling for backup. "Talon!" Jack shouted. "Scrambler now!" Talon emerged from the house, tossing a small device to Jack, who activated it and threw it toward the Scythian vehicle. A pulse of energy disabled all communications within a 100-meter radius. "We need to move," Jack said grimly. "They'll have check-in protocols. When these two don't report back, they'll send more." "The bunker?" Loria asked, her diplomatic calm giving way to maternal fear. "The children?" "No," Jack shook his head. "They'll sweep the area thoroughly once they suspect resistance. Our best chance is to reach Fort Marshall before they lock down the region." Loria nodded, trusting his military judgment. "What about them?" She gestured to the Scythians. "One unconscious, one injured but alive." "Secure them in the barn," Jack decided. "We're not executioners." Within 20 minutes, they had packed essential supplies into Jack's truck. The scrambler would buy them a few hours at most before Scythian reinforcements arrived. Jack had disabled the scout vehicle, ensuring the invaders couldn't use it to pursue them. As they prepared to leave, Loria paused at the farmhouse door, looking back at the place that had become home in such a short time. The simple wooden structure had witnessed her transformation from helpless refugee to capable survivor, from wary stranger to Jack's lover. "We'll come back," Jack promised, reading her thoughts as he often seemed to do. "Once this is over." "How can you be so certain?" Loria asked, allowing her doubt to show only to him. Jack's weathered face softened as he cupped her cheek. "Because humans don't give up what's theirs without a fight. And this," he gestured to the farm, to her, to the children loading the last of their supplies. "This is mine now." The possessive declaration should have offended her Nebulan sensibilities. Instead, it sent a thrill of belonging through her that she'd never experienced in her carefully curated former life. "Get in my truck," Jack said with a smile that held equal parts tenderness and determination. "We've got a war to win." As they drove away from the farm, Loria reached for Jack's free hand, their fingers intertwining. Behind them, her children sat close together, united by shared danger and purpose. Ahead lay uncertainty, but for the first time since the invasion, Loria felt something beyond mere survival. She felt hope. The journey to Fort Marshall was a gauntlet of narrow escapes and tense moments. Jack navigated back roads and forgotten trails, his intimate knowledge of the terrain proving invaluable as they evaded Scythian patrols. By nightfall of the second day, they were halfway to their destination when disaster struck. A Scythian blockade appeared around a bend, too suddenly to avoid. Jack swerved off-road, the truck bouncing violently as it plunged into the dense forest. They abandoned the vehicle when it could go no further, continuing on foot with only what they could carry. "Stay low and move quietly," Jack instructed as they crept through the underbrush. "There's an old hunting cabin about 2 miles east. We can shelter there for the night." They had nearly reached the cabin when the distinctive whine of Scythian hover vehicles cut through the forest silence. Searchlights swept the trees as insectoid voices chittered commands. "They're tracking us," Talon whispered, his youthful face grim in the fading light. Jack nodded, his expression hardening into the soldier he'd once been. "Change of plans. We make our stand here." What followed was a desperate battle against overwhelming odds. Jack's tactical brilliance combined with Nebulan precision as the family fought with unexpected cohesion. Mora's marksmanship dropped Scythians from their vehicles. Erila, the gentlest of them, proved surprisingly effective with flash grenades. Talon fought at Jack's side, the two moving with synchronized efficiency that belied their short-time training together. Loria found herself back-to-back with Jack as a fresh wave of Scythians closed in. "Any regrets about picking us up that day?" she asked, firing her pulse pistol with deadly accuracy. "Only that I didn't find you sooner," Jack replied, the heat of battle unable to mask the warmth in his voice. Just as their ammunition dwindled and exhaustion set in, the forest erupted with new weapons fire, but not aimed at them. Human soldiers in camouflage armor materialized from the trees, cutting down the remaining Scythians with ruthless efficiency. "Harmon," a burly man with captain's insignia, approached. "Should have known you'd be in the thick of it." "Captain Reynolds," Jack greeted, lowering his weapon. "Your timing's impeccable." "We detected the skirmish, part of a sweep operation. The counteroffensive began yesterday." Reynolds eyed Loria and her children with professional curiosity. "Refugees?" "Family," Jack corrected firmly. Reynolds raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment further. "Fort Marshall is secure. We can extract you there immediately." Fort Marshall was a revelation, not the military outpost Loria had expected, but a thriving community of humans and alien refugees working together against the Scythian threat. The family was given quarters in the civilian section, though Jack was immediately pulled into tactical meetings. "They need experienced soldiers," he explained apologetically. "The liberation of Elysium City begins tomorrow." "Go," Loria urged. "We'll be safe here." In the days that followed, Loria discovered her own value to the resistance. Her diplomatic training and knowledge of Nebulan protocols helped coordinate refugee efforts and improve communication between species. Her children, too, found purpose. Talon training with human soldiers, Mora assisting in the communications center, and Erila working in the medical unit. When Jack returned a week later, victorious but exhausted, Loria was waiting. Their reunion was passionate and tender, the fear of loss making their connection even more precious. "The Scythians are retreating across the sector," Jack told her afterward, as they lay entwined in the narrow bed of their quarters. "The combined human-alien fleet broke their supply lines. It's not over, but we've turned the tide." "What happens now?" Loria asked, tracing the new scar on his shoulder. Jack's eyes met hers, serious and certain. "We go home." 6 months later, spring had transformed the farm. New crops grew in fields once trampled by Scythian scouts. The barn housed not only horses and cattle, but a small fleet of modernized equipment, gifts from a grateful military to one of their decorated heroes. Loria stood on the porch, watching Jack teach Talon how to operate a new tractor. Her son had grown in these months, not just physically, but in confidence and purpose. He'd been accepted into the joint Human Nebulan Defense Academy, scheduled to begin training in the fall. Moore emerged from the house carrying a tray of drinks. At 18, she'd blossomed into a young woman who balanced Nebulan grace with human practicality. Her talent with communications technology had earned her an apprenticeship with the colony's restoration committee. "Mother, the Hendersons are coming for dinner," she reminded Loria. "Mrs. Henderson wants your recipe for that Nebulan spice bread." Loria smiled, still amazed at how easily they'd been accepted by the neighboring human families. "Tell Erila to pick extra herbs from the garden." Her younger daughter had developed an unexpected passion for botany, creating a garden that blended earth plants with Nebulan varieties salvaged from the botanical archives. At 16, she was already corresponding with xenobotanists across the sector. As the sun began to set, Jack and Talon returned from the fields. Jack's arm slipped around Loria's waist, his hand resting protectively over the slight swell of her abdomen, the miracle neither of them had expected. "How's Junior today?" he asked, his voice tender in a way only she ever heard. "Active," Loria replied, placing her hand over his. "Dr. Klein says the pregnancy is progressing perfectly. The first documented human Nebulan child. Poor kid's going to have scientists studying them forever," Jack said with a chuckle. "They'll have us protecting them," Loria countered, "and their siblings." The words still felt strange, referring to her Nebulan children and this new life as siblings, a family blended across species and cultures. Yet it felt right, too, in a way her perfectly ordered former life never had. That evening, as their human neighbors joined them for dinner, Loria observed the easy conversation around the table, humans and Nebulans sharing food, stories, and laughter. Captain Reynolds, now Colonel, raised a toast to the continued liberation efforts across the sector. Talon and young Tim Henderson debated the merits of different spacecraft designs. Erla shyly showed Mrs. Henderson her latest botanical hybrid. Later, as they prepared for bed, Jack found Loria gazing at an old photograph, herself in elegant Nebulan formal wear, from a diplomatic function years ago. "Do you miss it?" he asked quietly. "The luxury? The status?" Loria considered the question seriously. "I miss certain comforts," she admitted, "but not the emptiness behind them." She set the photo down and turned to him. "This life has substance that my old one lacked." Jack pulled her close, his calloused hands gentle against her skin. "When I told you to get in my truck that day, I had no idea where we'd end up." "No regrets?" Loria asked, echoing her question from the forest battle. "Not a single one," Jack assured her, sealing the promise with a kiss. In the quiet darkness afterward, as Jack slept beside her, Loria reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. From the burning ruins of privilege to the honest soil of a human farm. From haughty disdain to profound respect. From refugee to partner. The Scythians had taken everything she thought defined her, only for her to discover that what truly mattered couldn't be destroyed by invasion or fire. Strength, adaptability, love. Perhaps that was the most surprising lesson of all, that humans, for all their primitive directness and stubborn independence, understood something fundamental that her sophisticated Nebulan society had forgotten. Life wasn't about status or appearance. It was about building something real, defending it fiercely, and loving without reservation. As the child within her stirred, Loria smiled in the darkness. This new life would embody that understanding. Nebulan grace and human determination united in one small being, the first of many bridges between worlds once separated by prejudice and misunderstanding. Outside, the stars shone over fields that would feed them, a home they had defended together, and a future limited only by their courage to embrace it. "Get in my truck right now," Jack had ordered that fateful day. And Loria, former Lady Thandril of the Nebulan elite, had never made a better decision than when she did.